to Arts, Culture, and Things in I'm glad that you all who are here on time are ready to go with me. Let me tell you about arts, culture, and things in between, especially for those of you who are joining us for the first time. Welcome. Arts, Culture, and Things in Between is a program that features individuals who are gatekeepers of our arts and culture. They are not only performing artists, but also teachers, advocates, and scholars who focus on the preservation of the arts and culture. When arts is mentioned, it is being referred to as different art forms, like visual, applied, or performing arts. Examples of visual arts are painting, photography, film, sculpting. Examples of applied arts would be like architectural designs and project building. For example, fashion designing would be considered applied arts. The way that the fashion designer works with the various types of patterns and fabrics. Jewelry designing is also applied art, working with materials such as wood and plastic, metal, silver, gold, working with various types of stones. Furniture designing is also applied art. The way that the furniture designer works with various types of woods, the way that the woods are cut and designed. Then there's performing arts. Examples of performing arts: music, theater, opera, drama, singing, stand-up comedy, and my love, dance. When culture is mentioned, the middle part of the program's name, it generally means the way of life for a particular group of people. So for this program, it is inclusive to mean the various groups of individuals that embrace ways of life. In other words, looking at attitudes and behaviors. What is important to note is that as culture is mentioned, I'm really looking at how practices are passed from one generation to another. Things in between, last part of the program's name, has to do with life's issues that affect the execution of the arts and cultural practices. This involves both positive and negative experiences that become part of the creative process. Today's guest is a performing artist and so much more. But let me share the bio. Mildred Lowe celebrates 62 years in the music business. She is a music educator and pianist who hails from the city of Georgetown in Guyana, which is in South America. She specifically grew up in Albertown and Cummingsburg in the city and attended Fountain AME and Baird's under 12 for her primary education. She completed her secondary education at Cambridge Academy and finished when she was 16 years old. For a very brief period after secondary school, she tried typewriting and shorthand classes, but this did not last because of her love for music. Mildred's musical journey began as a child at home, as she was born into a musical family, the Hunts. This talent was passed down through generations. Her grandmother and mother were both musicians. Her mother was musically gifted, so it would appear that Mildred really had no alternative when it came to music. Mildred learned music from her mother, who was taught by Miss Miriam Daniels, and Mildred's mother eventually taught music. As Mildred got older, musical concerts on the weekend became a part of her life. In 1958, Mildred began attending classes for and performing on the piano and cello at the music festival held in Guyana. While she took piano classes at home with her mother, she attended cello classes with Mr. Francis Percival Long. It was from there, that she became involved in the family class with her sister and mother, which was fun. She was also taught advanced piano lessons by Miss Daphne Scott. Instead of attending to her short-lived typing and shorthand courses, Mildred would find her way to the music festival. It was at this festival that she spoke with Mr. Glenn Woodman, who had a choir at the festival, and lamented to him that she did not like typing and shorthand. He recommended her to Mr. Robert McCrae at Brigham School, who allowed her to unknowingly audition for a teaching position on the spot. She was told to play a march on the piano, which turned out to be part of her role at the beginning of the school day. This was the beginning of her employment as a teacher, where she spent 2 years from 1966 to 1968. That was at Brigham School. From 1968 to 2001, Mildred became a member of the Woodside Voice Choir, now Woodside Choir International. In 1971, as a member of Woodside Choir, she performed in Suriname for Suriname's trade fair. To date, when time permits, she gets involved in the work the choir is doing. In 1969, Mildred attended the Multilateral Training College, an institution that trained secondary school teachers. 2 years later, she graduated, specializing in language, Spanish, and literature. Following this training, she taught music and English at Charlestown Secondary School. While there, she was exposed to the first dance teachers program at the Ghana National School of Dance that was started by Madam Lavinia Williams. This experience allowed her to become a dance teacher. In 1975, she moved from the school she was teaching to, which is Charlestown, to Lodge Community High School. And in 1976, she moved on to St. Stanislaus College until 1980, when she went abroad to continue her studies. It should be noted that Mildred has had the honor of being involved in many cultural delegations. Her first experience at the Caribbean Festival of Arts, CariFesta, was in 1972, when Guyana hosted the first ever CariFesta. Later, in 1979, she was a part of the delegation representing Guyana at CariFesta, hosted by Cuba. In 1992 and 1995, respectively, she'd had 2 more similar experiences, but these times to Trinidad, the host of CariFesta for these 2 years. In 1983, Mildred earned a Bachelor of Arts in Music and Education from Caldwell University in New Jersey, returned to Guyana, and began her work at the Department of Culture as the Assistant Director of Music. In this position, she led musical workshops and taught new music, which was mostly Guyanese music, folk, and national songs. She was part of the GuyFesta team, moving around Guyana, addressing Guyanese culture. She edited books relative to Guyanese music. She also wrote a music magazine for Woodside Choir and was instrumental in running the radio program Mid-Morning Classics, which featured classical music, where she also spoke about the composers. In addition, she was part of the Burroughs School of Arts and Exhibitions. In 1985, Mildred spent a term, as in 3 months, of learning music at the London Commonwealth Institute as one of CARICOM's cultural officers in training to become a chief cultural officer in the Caribbean. From 1986 to 2001, she became Guyana's country representative to the Canadian Crossroads, an exchange program between Guyana and Canada. Further, as part of Department of Culture's duties, she attended directors of culture meetings in particularly CARICOM countries. In addition, she arranged many shows in Guyana for visiting heads of state, such as Queen Elizabeth and many others from the Caribbean, more specifically from CARICOM countries. As a cultural leader, she attended many international conferences and had the opportunity to adjudicate at a children's music festival in Grenada. In addition, she got the opportunity to visit outside of the Caribbean to Paris in attendance to the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organizations, also known as UNESCO Conference on Copywriting. From 1992, she served as the chairman of the Department of Culture until 2001, when she resigned, then retired. In 2001, Mildred migrated with her family to the United States and settled in New York. For 17 years, she worked with the New York City Board of Education and taught music in the public school system. She taught in elementary schools, which would be pre-K through grade 5. Students were taught music, singing, keyboard, and recorders, depending on grade levels. As a teacher in New York City, she regularly attended various conferences and workshops organized by teaching institutions. While teaching in 2005, she earned a Master of Science in Educational Technology from New York Institute of Technology. In 2018, Mildred retired after lending 50 years of service to the educational system. Currently, she is a music minister within the Episcopal Diocese of Long Island, where she plays music for the choir and church services. Due to the pandemic, she's engaged in virtual services through her music that she records, and this is pushing her to become tech savvy. Mildred continues to enjoy her musical life and life on the whole with her family members and sons, Curly, Kevin, and Kenrick, who are musicians in their own right. She has received many awards for her prowess as a musician: the Golden Arrow of Achievement from the Guyana government, the James H. Robinson Award for International Service from the Canadian Crossroads, the Guyana Cultural Association for her contribution in the preservation of Guyanese culture, and Brooklyn's Borough President Eric Adams Award for 50 years of teaching. Ladies and gentlemen, before we talk with today's guest, let's take a peek of who she really is via a slideshow. Mildred, welcome to Arts, Culture, and Things in Between.
Thank you. Thank you. That was so funny. I never realized how much there was in the span. I never realized until you see it in front of you.
62 years you're talking about?
Yes, it has gone so fast. Anyway.
Listen, that is somebody's lifetime plus some.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and we thank you. We thank you for your continued service. I always get a little ticklish when I look at those pictures in the past of guests. How was it for you looking at yourself on the screen there?
That was funny because, especially the first one, that was such a joke. My sister and I, it was our confirmation day, and we had to get dressed looking like, as we used to say, we come from some Jordanite church. I don't want to say, but and it was just laughter from my brothers. They were terrible teasers, and they were dying with laughter. We had to dress like that because that was what was specified. And you take these pictures, and they're there. And until now, my children take them out and laugh.
Listen, fond memories they are too. That you can look back and reminisce and really look at your journey.
Yeah, they do. They do. But it was, I mean, as a child growing up, you seldom disobeyed your parents. You did what your parents told you to do without question, you know? And this was something that was required as part of your growing up process. You had to go to church and you had to be part of whatever the church was doing. And you just turned up, show up. Yeah, that's how it was. So anyway.
So here you are. So you are let's talk a little bit. You're from a line of musical greats. I mean, your grandmother was a musician. Your mother was a musician. There are other family members who are musicians. Your children are musicians. You have 62 years in the music business and counting. Let me ask you, what do you remember about your grandmother?
Oh, she was the stickler for discipline. She made sure that we woke up every morning at 5:30. And you had to have prayers. And then each one of us had the day when you had to practice the piano before you went to school. And that was a routine. And then as you got older, she was the kind of person who was very into everything. So she had a lot of plants. She had chickens that she reared. She reared turkeys. And, and so each child had to take turns doing what we call the yard work, the housework. And as you got older, there were more things added to what was required from the children, until it got down to the weekends, which I liked only because you got to go on the bus to Stabrook Market. I like walking around, and you had to go there, and there was a man called Mr. John. That's what I remember his name. And he sold all of the stocks for the fowl feeds and stuff for the things. And so you had to have these things. He had them ready. You had to bring them out back to the bus, take the bus back home. And then she would meet you at the bus if she felt like it. But most times it wasn't a far walk anyway. And you brought it home for the animals' feed for the week. So from her, besides learning music, you learn the discipline of all kinds of other things, strange. Well, we would say now strange things. She was a fashion designer. She could design clothing, and she'd make clothing for like what you call a bridal party, putting out a whole bridal party with a bride and bridesmaids and whatnot. She did hair. She did your hair. She made stuff for your face. You learn from kitchen stuff, olive oils and stuff. She made soaps and oils, and and she painted. She used to make these beautiful, I don't know what you call them. It's made of glass, and she painted on the glass, and then she put it together with ribbon. So it was, and that was like, it wasn't something that was extra. That was, you just did it, lots of things that you learned from her. And that passed to my mother too. My mother was good at certain things, but my grandmother was the the person who was in the wall, and we call it, I don't know. And she insisted that we did certain things, or to say your prayers. Say your prayers. It's night, go to bed, say your prayers, So that was the kind of and you just took it in your stride because you didn't know it was different, and anybody else had anything else different. You figured that everybody had the same kind of grandmother or family or whatever. So
She was a very strong matriarch. I mean,
yes,
would speak.
yes, yes.
So, how old were you when you were exposed to music for the first time?
I don't know. I, the music was always in the house. It was always there. She was playing. My mother was playing. People would come to sing, because she taught music. So in all of that crazy situation, there was a time when she was teaching. So she lived with us. So there was never a time when you didn't hear music. I don't remember when I started to play the piano, exactly formally. I just learned. At first, you learn by ear because you hear somebody play something often enough, and then you yourself will go and pick at it until you get it right, especially if you liked it. And then my first exam, I think, was I was about 8, 7, 8, something like when you had the very preliminary exams, and you go up. I skipped some years. I didn't go year after year. I went as far as maybe grade 3 or grade 4. And then I stopped for a bit because I was doing so many other things. And then I came back and did the upper grades later on in teenage years, in the early 20s. So that was how that was.
So, Granny played the piano, Mommy played the piano.
And my father sang in the bathroom.
So music was all around. So your mother was a music teacher.
Yes.
How was she with you as a child? Her child.
Go to teach music. Oh, she was fine till you started to do wrong things, and she would say, "That's wrong, play it over." Or, "What are you doing there? That's not right. What is that? Look, did you look at the book?" You would get those kinds of things. But generally, it was fun because she didn't make it like it wasn't a job. You say, "Oh God, I don't want to play." I don't remember it being like that. The only time I remember being a rebel, which I was when my father used to have, he was a lodgeman, and he would have these lodge concerts. I don't know if you know about lodge concerts, but children in Guyana went to lodge concert every week, Sunday, at the town hall, and he belonged to some lodge, I don't know, Foresters, something. And so my sister and I used to play duets, my older sister, Marilyn. And I remember one year, I just didn't want to play anymore. It was like, I just had it. And we had to play a duet. And my father was, "Practice, let me hear you play." And I was like, because I was really mad at him. And I must have got a slap or two. I don't even remember. But I know when I got on the stage, I decided I wasn't going to play. So I put my hand on the keyboard, then the piano. I play a note. My sister had to play both the bass line and the treble line at the same time. And she kept punching me in my side to say, "Play, play." And I wouldn't play. And we came down, we bowed. As soon as she could, she said, "She didn't play a note. I had to play everything." And my mother said, "That's her, that's her." But, it was like, what am I going to do with this child? Because I suppose that was me. I could be stubborn and just go my own way. And I don't think we ever played duets for a long while after that. The concert finished because they never knew what next she will do. That was wonderful.
Lessons learned. So you've also played the cello.
Yes.
I'm wondering what piqued your interest in this instrument?
Well, there was a man called John Bunbury who taught string to children going to bishops and others around. My sister Marilyn was learning to play the violin. She went to Mr. Long to learn to play the violin. She's a very good violin player. And she's the older one. So whatever the older one does, the young one has to do. So they decided that she was doing the violin, I should do the cello. And my younger sister under me will do the viola. So there were the three of us. So my class was on Sunday mornings at 9:30 and at Mr. Long's house on Alexander Street, near to North Road there. And you had to fetch the cello to class, right? I had to fetch the cello. You know the size of a cello. I have one here right now. I could show it to you. I mean, it's a huge thing. And I used to ride a bike because I'm not walking from East Street to Alexander Street with a cello. That is like just asking for somebody to trouble you out of it. So, but riding the bicycle, you have to have great balance because on one side you have this thing and you this small and the bicycle. Anyway, I got there and usually Mr. Long was never sitting with you to come to play. He would always, you would go in and you say, "Good morning, Mildred." You sit on a sheet of paper and he would write out all the things that he required you to do, the exercises that you were supposed to play, how many times you wanted to hear it. You didn't see him until you hear a tap on the floor. And that is to tell you if it's good or bad or what. He would come down. Some days he would come down and to see how you're doing and to tell you, well, this is, look at your hand position and stuff like that. So he was the first person that taught me to play cello. And then afterwards, I started to work with John Bombery because he was that. And from that, I joined what they call the National Symphony Orchestra in Guyana. And every Sunday, they used to meet at the police band room to practice. So my sister and I, not the younger one yet, but Marlon and I would trudge up there. I think it started at 11 o'clock and went to 12:30 or something like that. And there you met other people who played stringed instruments, and members of the police band were the brass and woodwind and percussion section. And we made music. We learned stuff and we played as the orchestra, the National Symphony Orchestra of Guyana. So that lasted for about quite a few years. Let me see, till 5, 6 years, perhaps. I was with. Huh?
When last did you pick up the cello?
Oh my goodness, child. Not in a while. I don't even know if I could still play the cello. I'll make such horrible songs, everybody will just disappear. But it is here because my youngest sister, she played cello too. She learned to play the cello. And so she has it. It's here there by the piano. And I look at it and say, someday I'll pick that up and see if I can play it. But that someday has not yet arrived.
Maybe after the show today, you'll pick it up.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
You mentioned Mr. Francis Percival Long. You just mentioned his name. And it was at his place where you guys engaged in family classes.
Well, actually, the family class things, well, we didn't play there at his house as such, but we played at home because now you have people playing other instruments, piano, violin, cello. So in the initial stage, it was myself, Marlon, and my mom, we played. And then Margaret joined us. She played the viola. So the four of us would play together. Music, we did all kinds of stuff. And because they had the family class section in the music festival, we entered ourselves in the family class. I think we won twice or something like that. I can't remember. One time playing string, and another time we entered as a duets. Okay. Duets. Mm-hmm.
So you also took advanced piano classes with Miss Daphne Scott.
Yes.
How come? Because mommy was teaching you piano. And then somewhere along the line, you went to Miss Daphne Scott for advanced. How come that happened?
My mother said she's not going to teach me anymore. She's done with me. So that was more or less that. And she had such a big music school by then that at advanced level, there are other techniques that you have to learn. and you had to spend a lot more time for her to impart. So it was thought that if you want to go, let Daphne teach you. That was the thing, because Daphne was our friend, and she didn't live very far from, she lived in Albertown. So it was easy to do that.
So mom's classes that she was teaching at home was large already too. That's
Yeah.
what,
Yes.
okay.
So, and Miss Scott had a large school too, but everybody had their time, and she stuck to her. If you had a half an hour at, say at 3 o'clock, I don't know, just calling any time, you went, and for half an hour she really worked with you on your technique. She hated it that if you went to class and you didn't practice. She got really, really angry. So, well, I never fell into that category because I saw her really take off on some students of hers who didn't practice. So she would wall them out. But I like doing it. Again, you like doing what you were doing. So it didn't matter when you came home. You could practice any old time, early in the morning, late at night, whatever. So it worked.
I want to ask you now to play us something.
Oh, wow.
Magical fingers that you have there.
But actually, when we were talking, I remember that for my audition, I remember I told you the audition would come later. I had to play a march. I didn't know it was an audition.
Right.
Mr. McCrae just says, "Can you play marches?" And I look at him like, "Yes." You shake your head. He said, "Play a march," just like that. He was. So
I don't want you to play the march now.
you want me to just play anything?
Something else.
Oh, well, let me see. Let me turn this around a bit.
Yeah.
I'll start with one of the things I learned early, of course, that my children still like.
Okay.
Want me to play the whole thing?
Oh, that's good. That is good. That is good. I'm so in awe just watching you. If you can tilt your camera because I'm just seeing part of your face now. There you go. Yeah. I mean, I am just in awe about how the fingers were just going like, and it's so soothing and so good to watch.
But
I
that's
guess
like you on the dance floor. How I look. That's like how I look at you on the dance floor and wish I were you. Hey, it is what it is.
wow, thank you, thank you, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Really appreciate it. So you have not only done exceptional work in the music business, but also in education. You've been able to pull them together. So you graduated from secondary school at 16 years old.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was kind of common back then for 16-year-olds to graduate from
Yeah.
school and move on.
That happened because several things, I think. There were only three schools, I think, that did advanced level GC.
Uh-huh.
We had to they had limited space, and you had to have they were very picky. You had to have a range of stuff that I did not have. I was not a scientific person, and so I think the science stream had the space, and I wasn't a science person. So they move up there, people first, and then whoever space is left. So because of that, I didn't get to pursue A levels. So you finish O levels at by 16, you were done with your O levels. You could go back and do O levels with more O levels if you wanted to, but my parents were paying school fees. So at that point, and they would have to pay more school fees for me to do anything further. So it was a case of, well, what can you do, in the space between 16 and 18 when you could become a public servant? Because you had to be 18 to become a public servant, because that is the age to come in. So in that gap, that's when I did the typewriting and shorthand and kind of. Wow.
Okay, so Mildred, I want to ask you to speak up a little bit for me, because I want to ask you to speak up. So, all right, so you finished high school at 16, and then mom sent you off to typewriting and shorthand somewhere in Thomas Street there, opposite or right by Cyril's garage. I remember that because I remember the school, because I went to St. Anne's, St. Angela's across the street.
Yeah, across the street.
So I remember that very well. Tell us about this experience of going to typewriting and shorthand.
That was a disaster as far as I was concerned. You'll go to school, you learn to read, to write. You can write, you can read. There's not a problem with that. But it took me a while to figure out that when you made those squiggly things and the word is paid, it's not P-A-Y-D, it's P-A-I-D, like regular language. And I couldn't, why is this language so funny? And why are all these squiggly lines? And the teacher was very looking at you like, you're not going to make this. I don't know why your parents are wasting time. And I was like, I hate it here. I don't want to come. A friend of mine was going to the same place. She lived next door to me. Her name was Audrey. And she was saying, well, why are you finding it so hard? I said, I don't know. I don't find it hard. I just hate it. And then the other thing was you get on the typewriter and you got to type the QWERTY line, the Q, W, E, R, Q, Y, whatever that thing was. That wasn't too bad, But I was bored out of my mind. It was like a mindless exercise. Unfortunately for my poor mother, the same time when I started the shorthand and typewriting classes, Music Festival was on, right? It was Music Festival time, and they had 3 sessions, 9, 3 o'clock, and 8 o'clock at Queen's College. School started at 9 too. So I would leave home with my books, my bag, whatever. And instead of going south, I went north. And I was doing that for quite a few days until one morning my mother decided she was coming to the morning session. I don't know what got into her. So she comes up, and there I am, helping at the door, doing stuff. And she says, what are you doing here? And I couldn't answer. I said, well, I didn't want to go to school today. And, she was not a person who would knock your head off in public. Even in private, she would quarrel and fuss and fret, but she was, So after about the second day, after I realized she didn't say anything too much, I went back. And about the third day, she complained to Mr. Glenn Woodman about me, that she doesn't know what to do with this child. She can do things, and she doesn't want to go to this typewriting class. And so then he called me. He was a very nice man, and he said to me, so what is it about this typewriting and thing that you don't like to go to? And I said, I hate it. Just like, I hate it. I can't do it. I can't sit down there. He says, okay. And I thought that was the end of it. About an hour or so later, he came back with a letter in an envelope. And he says, do you know where Brickdam School is, at Brickdam and Camp Street? And I said, yes. He said, take this letter and go to the headmaster. His name is Robert McCrae. He's a friend of mine, and tell him I sent you. Of course, you're doing now as an adult talking to a child that was 16, just over 16, and still a child. So I went, and
before you tell us about what happened when you went to see Mr. McCrae, let me ask you this. What was the experience like when you attended the music festival?
Oh,
If somebody has never gone, how would you describe it to them?
excitement.
What was exciting about it?
Kids love competition. You know that. Kids love competition. And there were days when some people, some people who were really good musicians, and the competition, like in the under 12 piano category or the under 16 or whatever piano, singing, when it was choirs, the high school choirs, every school in Georgetown, particularly, the primary schools even, had choirs, beautiful choirs, conducted by people who didn't know formal music, but they learned the music. They got people to come and help them. So the whole of the auditorium at QC would just be filled with babbling, noises. But as soon as it came to competition, the entire place was quiet. There was not a single word heard said until it was done. And then depending on how the person performed, they'd get and jumping up and on, and the adjudicator would be in the middle there. And you always waited with bated breath to hear who was first, second, and third. And they had the sessions were like preliminary sessions. If there were too many people, they would have had preliminary sessions before, and then they have the formal sessions during the morning. The children's were in the morning, and then the best from these different classes would come to what they call championships, which would come at the end of the festival. So depending on the day of the week and the time, you would have people were always in there. People loved the music festival. It was every 2 years. And when I tell you people from all over Guyana came, it was a thing to come to music festival. So, go ahead. No, I was saying that it was excitement for us as children, especially when you get to not only participate, but help put people up on stage, hand out cards, collect people, fetch them. So that was also fun.
So was it at the music festival that you and family won something?
Yes, yes.
How was that experience? And you played?
1 year, I can't remember all of them, but 1 year we had a string quartet, piano and strings. So it was my mother on the piano, Marlene on the violin, Margaret on the viola, and I on the violin, cello. And we played something from the Water Music Suite, I think. One of those things, some Water music. And what was fun about that, there were only 2 sets of families in that class. So somebody had to be first or somebody had to be second, and we were first. That's, I mean, kids, we did do a good job. Yeah. And then it wasn't that, it was duets. You could have in a family class, you could do duets, your mother and you and your sister, and stuff like that. And you got to choose your own music too. You chose, it was a free choice. And I remember 1 year, I can't remember how many other families there were, but I remember 1 year, Ray Luck was the adjudicator. And at the end, when we were done, I think it was my mother and I played, and he bumped my mother off and told me, come and play with him. I was so elated to be playing with the great, Ray Luck. So we played together, and before we played, he told me little things that he wanted me to do that would improve the performance. So although it was fun and everybody had a good time, I also learned again. So
nice. So I want to take you back now to when you met with when Mr. Goodman gave you that envelope.
Well, so I'm
sent it to him, right? That you can't handle this, you really don't like this typewriting thing and this shorthand business, right? And then what? He gives you.
And I took it, and I told my mother, because she was there, I said, he sent me to this school. She said, well, go along, what you waiting for? So I jumped on my bicycle and I rode down to Brickdam, where it is on that corner there. It was a big school. And
Somewhere Camp and Brickdam.
Yes. And I go up, and he was a very short man, but he was up on the stage. I don't know if you know, in schools, it was open seating, and so you could see the entire
auditorium.
building, yeah, and his voice was like thunder. So when he spoke, so I came up, everybody who's on that kind of thing, they see the heads turning, but I think petrification took it. I don't know. I was so scared. I was just walking and going, and I said, "Good morning. My name is Mildred." Mr. Glenn Woodman sent me. Just said, and I gave him the letter. And he stopped and read it. He looked at me. He says, "You play the piano?" I say, your head is like this. He says, "Can you play a march?" And he said, "Well, come up here and play the march." So I went up. I knew marches, but I had never had to play. So I'm saying, Lord, what's going to happen here? So I got up and I played the march. And he says, he looked at the clock and then he says, wait until 1 o'clock. What am I waiting for? But I can't ask. So I'm sitting there. Hunger has long passed me. I'm not hungry anymore, nothing. I'm just, and when he rings the bell and he says, play the march. So I started the march that I played for him earlier, but I'm playing it louder. And that's when I saw how, well, disciplined that school was. Everybody was lined up, class by class, with the teacher at the front. They marched up the stairs and marched to their classes. And I had to keep playing until the last class was in. And I was done. He says, all right, come back tomorrow morning, be on time for 8 o'clock. So I didn't know if that meant I got a job, what I'm coming back for. Absolutely no idea. Absolutely, I was that, I don't know, zoned out. So I went back the next day and I had to play marches. Now I'm playing marches twice per day, in the morning and in the afternoon. All right. And then he sent me to a section of the school, the outside, which is the secondary side of the school, or the upper school. And he said, you're assigned to this teacher. She'll tell you what to do.
So let me ask you, the march that you played, now it's like at the beginning of the morning session and the beginning of the afternoon session, is that it?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm carrying on a private conversation via text. And is it Camp and Brickdam or Lime and Brickdam?
Camp and Brickdam, opposite the church, right opposite the church.
And oh gosh.
Yeah, it's Brickdam Cathedral.
Brickdam Cathedral, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right, good. So let me ask you this now. I don't know if you took your Prevagen or you that march.
Sure. You made me remember it. So, and, I should say that because of that, I couldn't play the same thing over. So over time, I had a series of marches that I would play. Every day I tried to play something different so I could learn marches. But the one that I played on the first day was this one. Let me see if I can.
Specialist?
Huh? Yes, I became a march specialist. It got like this sound.
I remember that march, and I was.
You see how it goes?
I remember that march. So let me ask you. So the children were filing like one after the other.
Yes, well, like soldiers from behind.
Yes, and their hands to their side, being very.
Imagine it's about 600 children coming in, and you playing till your fingers hurting you. And, one day he said, "Stop," because some child, I don't know what the child did, if he didn't march right, but he called the child out by name and put him on the side. I mean, he can get licks when marching, when prayers and stuff is over. He's gonna get it, whatever he was doing. Then he said, start again. So you have to start back.
Wow.
regimented.
Let me ask you, how long did you play for each? I mean, for 600 children to march in, and I'm not sure about the size of the area and all of that where they have to go. So you're playing for like what, 7 minutes?
Yes, yes.
Wow, wow, your fingers really have good training.
They hurt.
So how was it though working with Mr. McCrae?
Oh, well, I don't know, you wouldn't know because I don't think they used to have it after he left. But Brickdam used to have one of the biggest school fairs in Georgetown in December. When you came back in September, you started to prepare for this December school fair. It's a way that the school raised funds to help to do the various things that they did. So every child in every class had to bring something for the school fair. I can't remember if each class had a specific objective or what, but children brought tins of stuff, bags of stuff, different things. So one of my jobs, because I went there in, I can't remember, June, July, no, it was May, April, May. So I went back in September. He said, you're going to be in charge of collecting material for the school fair. I had a clue what he meant. Mm-hmm. But as soon as the school started in September, kids would be bringing in stuff and you had to say who brought stuff, pack it away and stuff like that. And then he decided that he's going to teach me some of the craft things that he made for the fair. So I learned to make pin cushions that look like tomatoes, paper, cut out paper shapes to put sweets in, things to hang up, you name it, all kinds, felt to cut out to make hats and all kinds of things that he sold at the fair for Christmas decorations and things like that. And it was so organized. I don't think I've ever seen another school do something like that. But
so you got a good foundation there then, Mildred.
Yeah, you didn't think of it like that. You just knew that, you're doing this. And that was part of it. And the other half of that was every part of the year, school year had an activity. So the first semester, which is September to December, you had the school fair. And then when it was coming up to April, when they were going to have common entrance, then they would celebrate the month of Mary, which is May. May is the month of Mary. So every child, because that was a Catholic school, every child had to learn a whole set of Mary songs. I could sing them for you, some of them, not all, but I had to learn them too. And every day you sang, in the month of May, you sang a Mary song to Mary. And then there was one day in May when Catholic schools would come to Brickdam and they have their own Mary service, crowning of Mary, Queen of the May.
And you mean Brickdam as in Brickdam Church? Brickdam Cathedral?
Yes, the cathedral, yes. The whole school would go over there and they would sing the songs and do whatever. And then they would crown Mary, they'd go around, they had a big statue and they would dress up the statue with these flowers. And then you walk around, process around the outside of the church, and you came in, you brought it up. And so that was part of because at that time schools were still, belong to a church, either Catholic schools or Catholic church or Anglican church or Methodist, whatever. So
somewhere along the line, you became a big shot. You got training for secondary school through Multilateral. You became a secondary school teacher, and you started off at Charlestown Secondary School. You also became a dance teacher. Mm-hmm. Tell us briefly, how did this happen with you becoming a dance teacher?
Well, my youngest sister always loved to dance. So when Lavinia Williams came to start the school dance, she wanted to go, but she was only about, 6, 7, something like that. So it was my job to take her to dance class and bring her back. So as I was going, I said, well, I might as well join in and see what's happening. So I started. And I started to go and I liked it. And then the Ministry of Education said that they wanted to include dance in the school curriculum. So they were going to organize dance teachers program with Lavinia for 3 times per week from 9 to 12 in the, in the morning, and then in the afternoon you went back and taught your regular class in the afternoon. And then you also had to teach children after school whatever you're learning, you're teaching. So you're learning and teaching at the same time. And that is where I met people like Linda Griffith, Vivian Daniels, Jamie Pigot, a whole heap of people that still doing dance, till today. We were all part of that first dance teachers program. And it was, oh my goodness. And when you're done dancing at 12 o'clock, you want to just lay out and die. But after a few weeks of doing it, it became so much a part of you that some of us who were hungry for punishment went back to night classes and did that evening class for adults with Lavinia from, I can't remember, I think from 6 to 8 or something like that. Well, I didn't do it all. I did it sometimes. I couldn't because I was also doing Woodside and, my life was full. I didn't need anything else. So that's how that came about. And from there, you trained, and I think it was a year and a half. It was a little while. Then you became the school. So I started the dance program at Charlestown, and each teacher had a dance group at the school where they taught. So they were doing a twofer, yeah.
Now, I understand the 3 times a week going to the teacher's course back to the schools. How were you able to handle the balance, though, of going to the dance classes in the mornings and then going back to the school in the afternoons and teaching? Because I know that you still had to do your regular teaching of whatever subject matter it was. And I am a product of that same dance teachers program, because Stella Walcott, who was at St. Angeles at the time, she was the one who drafted me in to the dance school. So I was part of that experimental project whereby teachers, you gals,
yes,
had to go back to your school and teach it. But I, for us, we children, we couldn't wait for the afternoon after school, because teacher Stella had practice for us then and all that. We were just consumed in thought about, can't wait for school to be over so we could do this. So I'm wondering for you how it was. I can only give you from my perspective as a child, being a part of this, but how was it for you?
I don't know, your body and your mind are strange things. Maybe it's like a piece of elastic, I don't know, that pulley thing that does silly putty, I don't know. But the more you push it, the more it gives you room to do stuff. I don't remember thinking of being tired, fed up, there's some adrenaline going in your system that keeps you moving from one activity to the other without thinking, this is going to kill you if you don't stop, kind of thing. It never occurred to you. I think it's a part of being very young. I don't know. But you didn't, and all of us were in the same boat doing stuff. And I remember the first big activity we had. I think it was something to celebrate Guyana's independence. Maybe it was the 9th, the 10th, I can't remember, but it was at the GCC ground in Boulder. And they had this big contingent of teachers with our students to dance. That's where I met, well, I didn't meet, I knew her, but worked with her, Daphne Rogers, and that whole lot. They were the costume people. And they made these beautiful costumes for the children, skirts and things on their heads. But we had to teach the dance. It was the Congo. You know the Congo dance?
Of course, anybody who went to the dance school back then had to know the Congo dance.
Yeah, do the break, And so we had to learn the Congo and then go back and teach, our children in the afternoon. And then we had this huge explosion of color and dance. It was beautiful. We had about, I don't know, 300 or 400 children out there. That and it was so there. I think that is where the love like just grew for all the things cultural. You know, I didn't mind going to anything that had that smell of culture. Dance, I'm there. Music, I'm there. Art, drama, whatever. You know, whatever, I'm there.
How did dance benefited you?
Um, Physically, it was good because I was, I can't tell now, but I was really skinny, really dry bones kind of person. But I think it made me think differently. You began to look at space, for instance. Every time you see a space that they say is a dance space, your mind starts to dissect it. Well, it's a square room or it's a round room. What could I do in this space? What could happen here? I don't know. Your mind just does that. So every place you go in and you look and you see a square space, how many people you could fit in here? What could they do in this little space? You know, that it made you see art in a new way. You're seeing color in a new way. I remember Daphne Rogers saying one day she had this little gadgety thing. I said, "What is that?" She says, "This tells you the color of how a color will look on the lights." I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "Because every color, you look at a color, and when you look through, the light shining, it shows you a different color on it because of what it is made up of." So she would look at somebody's skin tone and she would match the skin tone with the color, and she could tell you which color would look good on you under the stage lights. And to me, that's like, what? You could do that? You know? So
Yes. It's so funny you mentioned Big Daphne Rogers, because when you talk culture in Guyana, you have to mention some names, like
yes.
just like the Pilgrims,
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Dolphins, I mean, there's some people that you just have to mention their names. But let me push forward as we talk about culture, because you also got to experience Caribbean Festival of the Arts, fondly known as CariFesta. And the first CariFesta happened in 72, around the same time the bubbling of all these different cultural awarenesses, they're happening. How was that experience for you? What was your best memory of CariFesta?
The first one, 72.
How was the first experience for you in 72, first ever CariFesta?
Mm-hmm.
I want you to share your best memory of CariFesta, period, of all that you've gone to.
Well, my best memory, there are several best memories, but I suppose my best memory is me meeting Louise Bennett in person. I always loved her poetry. I used to read her poetry out loud for fun. I loved it. So the first time I'm going to meet her is when she came to the cultural center, which had no roof. It had, in those days, it had a tarpaulin for the roof. They didn't finish it yet. And she's this really large lady coming in, and full of fun, she's coming down and she's sitting on a chair and she's talking to Frank Pilgrim, and she says to him, "Well, Frank, you put me on this little chair, I'm going to fall off. I'm going to fall on the floor." And he says, "No, Lou, you're not going to fall off. Just sit down." So she sat on the chair, and then a few minutes after, the rain came down, and apparently where she was sitting, water was dripping. She said, "You have to move me from this chair, water fall on me head." Just like that, she came on loud. She didn't, I found that so down to earth, and and she was talking with everybody, and then she got on stage, and this whole person became this, I don't know, she impressed the hell out of me. That's all I could tell you. And it was something I always kept in my mind. Even if you say 72 CariFesta, it was that, and the fact that people from Jamaica could play music whole night. I'd never seen that happen. The entire night, out in what's now Festival City, and every country had certain streets. So Bajans were on Idlers Row, Jamaican beer, mango, something. I can't remember all the names. And then they had like a benab where people used to meet for every night. And they had this, I can't remember names now, but this was a band that played the early beginnings of reggae music. It was a spirit commoner type music. And so they would be there. They had their things with them, and they just played music all night and drank and talked. And I'm like, and the next day they would come out and perform like nobody's business. I said, people really do live crazy. That's all I could say. But 72 was memorable.
So what about, you've gone to Carifesta in Suriname? No, I'm sorry, in Cuba, and then Trinidad, sorry. Cuba, twice in Trinidad. How were those experiences in comparison to the one in Guyana? I'm also thinking that you probably would have experienced some richness of culture in Cuba, especially. And I'm only saying that because I've gone to Cuba like 3 times through the dance company. Yeah. And I know that the way that they put a twist on things and the very nature of Cuban culture is something to behold. Yeah. I was wondering, you know, how were those experiences for you?
Cuba is, as you know, is different. Because I've been back several times since 79. I went back like 3 times after then. And the way that they present their life and their culture is not something separate and apart from their life. It's their life. It's their life. So everybody sings, everybody plays, everybody dances in some form or the other. So, as you know, in 79, they had Carifesta Village. And the Carifesta Village was an entire school district. Their schools are a district. You have from nursery right up in the same, they have sports arenas, post office, shops, stores. It's like a mini village, and everybody knows where they're going and what they're doing. So to watch, not only they performing, but all the other people who came from non-English speaking countries, Javanese, the people from Brazil, the Venezuelans, Costa Ricans, Argentinians, you name it, they were all there. And it was like a potpourri of, you know, you just inhaling every night. There was something every day. As you know, Carifesta you could become addicted. That's all I could say.
No sleep time. No sleep.
You didn't sleep.
So let me ask you to play us something else. But before I ask you to do that, I just want to tell our viewers that I'm sitting with the one and only gifted Mildred Lowe, who's had 62 years in the music business, 62 years, a Guyanese icon in her own right, a Guyanese legend, a musical legend in her own right. Mildred, could you play us something, please? I just want to hear you again, you know.
Okay. I was thinking that maybe I should play something from Guyana.
Okay.
I like George Noel's music. I knew him, and he was such a gifted musician, and the way that he had to leave us was kind of sad, which but his music is still there to remind us he was very national oriented. He loved Guyana. He loved, doing the music, and he expressed it in his music. This one is just listen. I think you know it when you hear it.
Mildred, could you tilt your camera so I can see your fingers, please? Something about
fingers. Here you go. How is that?
That's good.
All right.
And, and thank you very much. Thank you very much. You know, I watch you play and I'm thinking, gosh, this woman bright. She's walking around with all of these notes in her head, all of these songs. I just want to be like you when I grow up.
Me too, want to be like you. We can work out, we can work out an exchange.
Thank you. For those of you who've just joined us, who've joined us late, I'm sitting with Mildred Lowe on arts, culture, and things in between. You just got a little taste again of her musical prowess on the piano. So you have really done a good job of of the way that you have worked in music and education. And you're an eclectic person, I would say. After teaching at Charlestown Secondary School, you went to Lodge Community High and then you went on to St. Stanislaus College before traveling abroad and earning your Bachelor of Arts in Music and Education. And it really made sense that you got a bachelor's degree in arts and education, right? Music and education, sorry. How was this experience for you? Because I'm thinking that it's the first time you're going out for especially to address education. And we know that education in Guyana is different from education in the United States. How was that experience for you?
Well, it was certainly an eye-opener. I went, before my school became Caldwell University, it was Caldwell College. And it's basically a Catholic college. You know, we had lots of nuns and priests and stuff teaching professors there. They had regular people, but they had a lot of that. And Caldwell, as you know, is in up Essex Fells, New Jersey area. And here began my what I call my international education in terms of how people see you. Um, I know I come from a country with what we call six races. But when you get out there, you're only one of two races. You're either white or you're black. And so the first experience I had was having to deal with people who thought, where did you come from? Questions like that. Where did you learn to speak English? You speak like somebody who was trained in London. Did you come from England? No. Guyana, where is that? You know, that those kinds of things. And because I had had the kind of background I had, some of the things were very easy for me to do. And they would kind of look at me like, how come? And it got to the point where even my friends who were black would ask me, they used to call me the Oreo cookie at college. And, you know, I don't know, my skin was thick, I think. It didn't bother me. We just got on and with both the whites and the blacks. And I was one of the few blacks that could stride both areas of, you know, what are you talking about? And I could relate because Guyana is definitely a country that teaches you without you knowing, teaches you a lot about racism and how to live with people. You know, it does. And you don't realize it until you're out there and realize that, you know, we're all human. That's the only race there is. It's a human race because everybody was the same in the end. Besides that, education wise, it exposed me to American style education, how people learned, how people taught. And that for me was a little battle, you know, mentally, not the work, but the way it was presented and how people taught as in teaching, and what people thought about the way to teach. So it opened your mind to that. But it was also fun because you got to learn a whole host of other things that you didn't even think about. Um, you got a chance to play in a band, to play in an orchestra, you know, do recitals. It was the first time I got an opportunity to go to musical theater, Broadway, because when you're there, students used to have cheap tickets. So I went to opera. I went to the opera there. I went to see theater, musical theater, the dramas, because it was only an hour's drive from Caldwell into New York City. So as a student, you have certain privileges. So it was an interesting time. I spent for 3.5 years there, and I learned more than just music, you know. So it helped me, put me in a good stead for when I came back home to know things that we could perhaps try to do and to think differently, thinking differently.
So you talk about when you go back home, and I'm thinking now, before, when you went back home, rather, you went into Department of Culture. So I'm wondering if before you left to go abroad for your studies at Caldwell University, if you had any thoughts about going back home and not getting involved in academia, or continuing rather your involvement in academia, as opposed to making that switch that you did to Department of Culture.
Well, actually, I didn't leave. I didn't leave education because in those days, education and culture were under the same head. It was education and culture,
Yes.
right? So I didn't leave the Ministry of Education. I just went to the other half of it because I was still teaching, but in a different way and working in a different way. But you know, the level of, yes, the level of working, they had separate, they and Guyana had a separate idea of how to deal. Culture was for them, culture was culture, and education was education. But when they started to recognize that you have to teach these things to the kids, it's not just about arithmetic and English and stuff like that, but you have to expose. And I remember that back in the 70s, I don't know, when we became, I suppose it's 66, when they were talking about integration, because it's since then culture began to take a front role. And they talk about the 6 races of Guyana being one people. And the idea was everybody must know something about the other cultures. Everybody, don't care who you are, what you profess to be. To become a Guyanese, you have to learn to respect each other's background from whence you came. So culture became for me educating, not only me educating people, but people educating me. So I went to all kinds of places and meeting different people who learned and taught different things about the religion and stuff like that.
Let me ask you though, how did you get the job? I understand that culture and education and culture were in the same ministry.
Hmm.
How did you get the job at department in that?
Oh well, I suppose against my stubborn streak came out, because when I came back, I thought that I could better serve Guyana in the cultural field than in the education in terms per se of being in a school teaching music. Because when you looked at what was available for me to teach music in schools, it was a pretty tough go. Many schools by then, few schools had music in their music program. They only had maybe broadcast to schools, and the schools that had a music teacher only had a part-time music teacher. They didn't have equipment. There were many ifs. And I said, well, if I go into culture, I can meet and work with more people than, and I figure I could give more than if I went to a school. So I told the then PS that when I came back, you had to come back into education. And I said, I want to go and work in culture. And he said, but you're in education, how are you going to go over there? I said, well, I'm going to go ask for a job in culture. And it so happened that at the time, Lena Dolphin was a chairman. And they had a vacancy that said assistant director of music. I said, oh, I could be that. So give me that job and I can do it, whatever it is. Because at the time, it wasn't clearly defined and everybody did everything in culture. You came in as an assistant director of music, but you had to help with everything, writing, teaching, whatever needs to be done. So there was a little bit of a toss up within the ministry because they figured that I owed first allegiance to education. And I said, I owe allegiance to cultural education, you know. So, but I did win out. And I think that doing it that way opened it for a lot of people to see what is possible. I got exposed to even more stuff, but a lot of people understood a little bit more of how to work in Guyana, how to make Guyana a vibrant cultural society.
Now, what are some of your responsibilities?
As an assistant director?
Just if you could give us the few top ones that you thought you made a difference. If you can give us like 2 or 3, that would be good.
Well, one of the things that I did was to ensure that every school, as we were working, every school had access to some kind of Guyanese music. So we had this raft of national songs. You know, I think we were the only Caribbean country that got that amount of national songs in the repertoire. So I got with Sister Rose Magdalene. She had a choir and Woodside Choir. And we decided that we were going to record national songs. So we recorded them. We made a booklet for the kids. We said for children. So one side of in those days was the spool, the little spool tape recorders, excuse me. And we would, on one side of the tape, we put the songs. And then the other side, we put what we call a -1. You know, the -1 is just the music. And we printed a booklet with all the songs. We sent it out to schools and we had to make sure, I think at that time they had to make sure that every school had at least a tape recorder. So we sent it out to schools up and down the country, every region. You don't know national songs? Oh, here's a national songbook. You don't know, here's, and we kind of pushed that. And that was one of the things that I think really worked for us. The National Dance Company came about as an entity where I was there, because they actually paying people to dance. That was unknown. Pay people to dance? What is wrong with you? That's what the things. But we did get it done. Lynn was the pusher, and she did get that in on the what they call as a public servant, as a job in the public service. So they had the different levels, and anybody could apply for a job as a dancer in the National Dance Company and expect a salary. That is something that I would like to see happen for across the board, but hey, that's another day and another matter.
Yeah, times have changed a lot.
Oh yes.
Guyana, times have changed with respect to how the dance company is.
Yeah, it has.
But you were so much a part of the music scene in Guyana, and if I'm not mistaken, Mildred, you were instrumental with the whole copywriting thing for music in Guyana, and that was, I think, it might have been since 1987, if I'm not mistaken, you said. And they still can't get it right. I wonder, how come musicians in Guyana are still struggling to address this issue? Any thoughts on that?
Well, there's so many thoughts, and we've made so many stabs at the cherry, as we say. You stab at it here, but there's never been a total concept. I think one of the first things is for the economists and the people who do budgeting, and that's how the finance people, to understand the importance of copyright in a country. Now, people say copyright and they think only of music, but it isn't like that. Copyright is anything, what we call cultural property. Anything that a person produces from themselves, it is their own. It came from their own creative instincts. And they're putting it out there. And just as how a plumber expects to be paid for his hours of work, or a carpenter, or a contractor, or whoever you're going to call. You say you're a contractor, you're an engineer, And you up here, before they walk in the door, they tell you the rate per hour. A musician hardly ever gets a chance to do that, if ever. That's one aspect of it. But there are also other kinds of copyright things, like people who do the craft, people who make stuff, people who paint, people who draw, people who design. Even now in the audio field, when the audio field is they get a little more push. But UNESCO had put up a whole program of how to deal with copyright, because it's infringing even on the things that the country has. Guyana has a lot of, I'm not talking about time, they have a lot of stuff in the ground. They got a lot of stuff above the ground. And nobody's talking about who does it belong to. It says it's ours, but where does it say it's ours? We don't have any laws to protect anything that we say is ours. You know, no, everything that people put on, you see a little TM, they trademark sign on it, they have it registered and stuff like that. And when I went to Paris, the simple example that they used was basket weavers. These are some African people. They're talking about the size of a folder, a tray to put stuff on, and how they're going to market it. And they said, you can't make it, if 20 people making the same type of basket, they can't make the basket of different sizes. Then when you go to ship it out, you got to make 20 different size baskets to fit each one. So you have to have uniformity in that way. So if you say the basket must be 9 inches by 6 inches, well, the envelope or the box got to be that size to match it. So that was one aspect that, and I said you have to have a copyright for the basket and for the design of the thing. So we took it from there, and we looked at, of course, music. And one of the simplest things that I pass on to musicians, and I tell them to preserve their ownership of any music that they write or song they write, whatever. You write it out, you sign it inside or with your name and the date, and then you post it to yourself. So when it comes back, it has a posted stamp date with your name, and you don't open it at all, because the posted stamp is there to show that it's yours. Because if you open it, well, but it's there, it's yours, and you know you signed it. And you keep that as it's a very primitive form of copyright, all right? But until such time as we have stipulated what our copyright laws are, and people can know that before I could play this music, I need to get permission from so and so and so and so on. That sort of thing. So, for instance, let me give you an example of what we've done. Guyana had the ML Folk Singers and the Police Male Voice Choir. Many years ago, they made LPs with folk music, lots of folk music. It was produced by the then Department of Culture. All right, it's there. They used to give it away and whatever, sell it when they can. They didn't really sell it, they gave it away as stuff. So now, how many years later, here I am. That music, the music might not be belonging to MLs or to police, but they're presenting it. So in that way, that part of it is theirs. It's their voices, their time, their talent. And you go on the net and you see the whole ML LP being sold digitally by somebody somewhere who's charging $10 per copy for the whole LP. Where's that? It's going straight to that person, and it's selling. People buy it because people like Guyanese music. Guyanese is a big diaspora out there. And that is happening with a lot of Guyanese music that we say is our national songs, our national music. There's nothing to save it from. There's no copyright on it. There's no trademark on it or anything like that. And which brings me to your thing about how do these people survive?
Right.
How are musicians and artists surviving in Guyana when nobody's paying them what they're really worth?
It's a sad thing, but let me ask you a question, and this is in no way to put you on the spot. Now that you are retired, and we'll talk about that later on, do you think that, would you consider lending your service to that aspect of of um, working through the whole copyright bit, because you have so much experience and background and knowledge about this. Would you consider?
Well, I haven't thought about it for a while, but because I was talking with you and you mentioned it, and I remember all the people. I can tell you where my mind was. I remember all the people who taught me. I remember all the people who played and performed in Guyana for free, for free. You know, they had to turn up and perform at these different concerts for fundraisers and stuff, and who died destitute.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there are more of those people in Guyana, I figure now, or else if they're not there, the arts part of Guyana will die because people will say, I can't make money in music, I ain't doing it. And they'll stifle whatever little bit of talent, creativity, or they're going to try to get away from Guyana and go somewhere where they could make some money. That part of it made me think again about how to go about um, helping. Because up here, as you know, we got all kinds of institutions that help artists. Up in America, there is an artist aspect that goes towards preserving their life after they can't perform anymore. It's there, but we don't have that. And those people, they can't walk into the bank and say, I'm an artist, I'm a singer, I'm a musician, and I need a loan. And they're gonna ask you where you work, or how much money do you make every year or every month? Is it steady? Who is your employer? Who pays you? Do you pay taxes? You know, half of those questions they can't answer. And they do need the funding to get them to go. So
I mean, we could have a whole different talk about that because of the state of culture in Guyana, really.
yeah.
But I want us just to take a peek through the slideshow, Mildred,
Okay.
of your work. I thank you for this rich conversation. And when we're done with this, I will have a sidebar conversation with you about the whole copywriting piece for Guyana, because I think we need to really come together, a bunch of us, and really take it
Yeah,
up.
push it. Yeah, I agree.
Yes. So let's watch a little bit of you, and then we come back and we will talk some more.
Okay.
Good.
What?
Oh, that was nice and quick.
Yeah.
So you have migrated, you migrated in 2001 with your family?
Yes.
In 2001, you migrated.
Yes.
Got right back into teaching now, right? So you were in the music, switched to teaching, back in the music. How do you, I mean, you spent 17 years teaching here in the United States.
Right.
And I'm wondering, how do you compare your teaching in Guyana to your teaching in the United States? And how did you get into teaching when you got here?
Well, suffice it to say that an opportunity presented itself, and it wasn't something that I was kind of looking for or setting out to do, but it presented myself, and I said, well, maybe I could try this for a year or two just to do something different, because I was kind of in a rut in Guyana, and I figured it wouldn't kill me to do it. So there was a recruitment drive for teachers to come to New York City to teach. And I throw my hat in the ring, you know. And I was kind of surprised when I got an almost instant response. And I was told, come so we can do an audition, another blind audition again. I didn't know what this audition would entail. What it entailed was me coming up, going to the Department of Education in downtown Brooklyn, and the person saying to me, so how soon could you come back? And I'm looking at him like, I have a job where I come from. I'll have to go back. No, you want to know when I could start? I said, I have a family and I have a job and I got to, get my head around this whole thing that's just been thrown at me. So it was like a crazy 3 or 4 months. I had to restructure my entire life, as it were, in Guyana and come up here. By the time I got here, it was the week after 9/11. So people weren't thinking straight, doing it was crazy. And I got to a school where I thought it was the worst position there was at the time. I didn't teach music and nobody knew. To me, it was a whole um, unsettling period. And when I did settle down, teaching up here, of course, is different as I learned from before, but was even more different than when I was here in the 80s. So I had to definitely readjust in a lot of ways, getting back into classroom teaching and having, all kinds and types and behaviors of kids in the same classroom. And the teacher is like a shepherd pulling kids, to get them into a group so you could do something. But on the plus side, it introduced me into a whole different atmosphere, a whole different thing in which now I'm going in that direction, I have gone in that direction, which was technology. Getting into technology and learning how to teach music using technology and eventually going and do a master's in educational technology, which was geared particularly for schools, how to teach using technology in schools. So it also allowed me to move around the states here and see how different states handle their education policies and programs and meet a lot of people who were teachers are well known in the education field here in America. I had the opportunity to meet Maya Angelou in Chicago and so many others, people who wrote some of the policies that the Department of Culture now, Department of Education now uses, and see how they think and what they see. So that too was experience.
Now, how did your training in Guyana help you with your teaching here in the United States?
Well, first, I met a lot of Caribbean children in the schools because was teaching in Brooklyn. And I understood them and I understood some of the background from which they came because it was so similar to ours. And
All right.
they had.
Stop you just for a bit because I'm getting no sound. Folks are saying no sound, so I'm not sure what's going on. Is your mic on? I can hear you.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh.
Folks are saying no sound. I don't know. All right, let's continue. Hopefully Raul would check it out for us. Yeah, go ahead. You were telling me you met children, Caribbean children.
Yes, who came from my own background and who I was able to work with and help them to find their feet in the new, because a lot of them were newly arrived immigrants, and they were able to help them adjust. And of course, I was able to introduce some of the music from the Caribbean that they were, acquainted with to get them settled in. And also children from the diaspora, if you can call it that way, Africans, Asian children from Europe, out of Armenia and Croatia, places like that. They're all part of the school system. So that was definitely a teaching and learning experience on both sides. And of course, the languages.
But I'm wondering though, was there anything specific aside from meeting children from the Caribbean that would give you that sense of familiarity? I'm wondering if specifically teaching some techniques then that you used in Guyana, how they might have worked for you. Because we know that teaching children, the children population in these the United States, especially in Brooklyn, right, especially in New York, is a different, it's culture shock.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Wondering if there was any specific technique that you that you used based on what you used in Guyana that you pull through to your experience here as you wrap your head around the fact that the population of children that you're dealing with is in a completely different system than the educational system in Guyana.
Oh, well, I think that the first thing I had to learn is how to get along with your admin staff, with your principal and your assistant principals, and your senior staff. Mm-hmm. I think because I was in culture with administration, I understood some of the things that they were doing, and I didn't have to get frustrated by what I saw, what they did. I understood why they were doing what they were doing. That was one part of it. And the other aspect was the staff that I worked with. The staff that I worked with, a lot of them came from the Caribbean too. A lot of them came from the Caribbean. So we kind of braced each other and learned from each other and able to, if you have a difficulty with a student or with the class, you would say, well, look, I have, and they would say things to me like, well, this child is so and so, and we need to do this. And we would try to reach out. And so there was a cooperative effort. I think that worked for me quite a lot. And although there were many days of, you say you want to throw your arms up and say, forget this. But there are always people there who are always smiling, no matter how it's hard and you want to just, we could do this. Or the enthusiasm was such that even when I'm kind of like flagging, they would fire you up and get you going. And of course, we used to have a day they still do it at the school where I was. We used to call it Pride Day, preserving our educational system. We had an acronym for that. But on that day, we used to have the kids make costumes, like if it was carnival, we would have a parade around the streets. We come back in, we have a concert, the children performing, we bring in people to perform. And then the parents would bring foods from their countries, and each class would have a display outside their door, and you visit everybody. So you eat all kinds of foods, you see all kinds of different things that the children did for the year. They displayed it and they could talk about it. So there was that kind of camaraderie that kind of cemented and knitted together a whole host of different people. That was one day where you felt like you won.
That's good. I'm glad that you gave me that response without me even probing for it. But let me ask you the flip side of that. What is the worst experience, the most challenging experience you've had as a teacher? And then I'll ask you to play something for us.
Oh my goodness. I have to think about that. My worst experience. I suppose it would be a day when it was the first thing in the morning. You have to teach the first period in the morning, and kids would come in so angry and so, I don't know, spaced out. It's not really spaced out, but they're so angry that they would disturb the whole equilibrium of a whole class. And if it happens on the first period of the first day of the week of school, like on a Monday morning, that could throw you for a while. I could actually, in my mind's eye, seeing some kids there were many kids like that, which was unfortunate that You had to, when you found out, the parents shoved them out the house, whether it's cold weather, hot, whatever. Sometimes they didn't have the coat, they come without socks, it's cold, short sleeve shorts, and they didn't have any breakfast. They came too late to go to breakfast. You got to get the canteen they open so that they could get in there and get something to eat. And you became the mother, the father, the nurse, the sent for the nurse, whoever you needed. So by the time we done all of that, there was a space for teaching. It wasn't there. You didn't teach.
More like a social worker.
Yes, yes, that was it.
I tell you, I don't think teachers get commended enough. And I just want to say thank you for your service. Thank you for the work that you've done in systems internationally. 50 years of service, it's not an easy one. It really is not an easy road. And you've done 50 years of this.
I don't know how I did that. How did I do that? I have no idea.
But you persevered and you're smiling about it. And I'm sure if I had to drop and say, Mildred, come back, we need you, you would do it without even thinking.
Well, yeah, I would, but I like my life now.
So let's get a retiree piece on the piano. What would you play for us?
This is gonna be my last piece, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this piece of music is from one of the first musicals that I saw, Chorus Line, and there's one of the songs in the last, like the finale before the finale, where one of the dancers, it's a story about dancers here in New York and what they go through. And the question was asked of the principal dancer, if this were your last day to dance, what could you say about it? And she says, she started to sing the song, What I Did for Love. And she said, it was all about love. It's all about love. And I suppose when you see the words, and I can't sing, I'll just chase everybody away, but I'll try and play it. And I understood why I was doing what I was doing, because it wasn't always about the money, or hardly ever about the money. Obviously, it's about your love of it, whatever it is.
Of the song? I know you remember some of the words of the song.
Kiss today goodbye. Tomorrow and its promises. What we did, what we had to do. Can't regret, won't forget what I did for love.
All right, let's hear it.
All right, I'll try without being silly.
You're never silly on the piano, trust me.
Yeah. Yes. there you have
Love it, love it, love it. And I didn't tell you, I love your picture on the wall behind you. It just speaks to what this is all about. Thank you, Mildred. For those of you who joined late, I'm sitting with the comparable Mildred Lowe from the Hunt family. If you are not familiar with the Hunt family, just Google them. That's all I'll say. So Mildred has been playing or been in the music business for 62 years, older than some of you. I know y'all thinking what? Older than some of us, I mean.
me, my face.
You know, older than some of us. I mean, you've been recognized for your stellar work also by Guyana Cultural Association, Brooklyn Borough's president, the Canadian Crossroads, you know, the Guyana government. You have your accolades for your contribution to culture through music and education. I must say, you are, and as I mentioned, you're from a huge family. And like, if that is not enough, your sons are musicians too. All of them, Kevin Kerwin and Kenrick Kerwin and
Curly and Kenrick, yeah. It's Ricky.
Right? Curly, Kevin, and Kenrick. Yeah. You have nieces and nephews who are also doing music. Yes, your siblings are. I'm thinking that all of you total must be a couple of hundred, a few rather, 100 years put together. I challenge you to count those years and let us know. You know, it has to be a few hundred years, hands down. And I was just wondering, and this is a funny wonder, when you siblings and other family members get together, Mildred, do you eventually end with music talk?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's competition in the house, especially among the younger ones. They would, we'd just be sitting around and they, as we say, were talking, whatever. And then one would get up and decide they're going to play something, and another would say, I could do better than you. And then there would be a set at the back saying, well, let me see who could do better than who. You play first, or you play second. I think you could do a little better.
Okay, could you raise your voice? Your audio is low.
Okay. They would have a competition to see who could play better than who, or if they could compose something on the spot or extemporize on the spot, things like that. Or they would suddenly bring up the steel pan, or the other one would go bring his saxophone, or that kind of thing, and they would just play, and then the rest of us would either be dying with laughter at what came out, or what do you think that was, that kind of thing. So and then would be a big argument, big noise and whatever, and then somebody gonna decide to sing, but that would be the end of anything.
So let me write that question. I was at your mom's funeral and I saw some of family members in full play.
Yeah,
it did make sense because of who mom was and is a legend and an icon that we can't talk about music without mentioning mom's name. Have you all ever done a performance as a family that you remember?
You mean for public?
Yeah.
Well, I would say yes, but not us alone. Not us alone. Us with other people. But since we've been up here, we've been in concerts where all the ones who do music were involved.
Mm-hmm.
All the ones who are up here and who were involved in music, because the family has expanded, and so even some of the expansions are musicians, so they're also involved. Mm-hmm. So we've done a lot of that at I remember a particular one at St. Bart's.
Did you tickle your volume?
Oh yeah, okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay. St. Bart's in Brooklyn, the Episcopal Church, we did a lot of work with them, putting on a concert. It was huge.
Uh-huh.
And but the younger ones now are doing their own thing. They do concerts in their churches, with other churches, and stuff like that. But yes, we've done that.
Well, I'm going to charge, I'm giving you a charge, but I'm not going to charge you consultation fee. I would love to see you guys come together and do a performance as a family, because I think you have everything that it would take to do a musical performance, right? So I'm charging you with that, and I'm not charging you consultation fee. How about
Well,
that? So listen, I have to say this though. I admire the Hunts family because of the practice of passing down the talent through the generations, and in so many ways it's part of what this program is about. And I know that your sons are playing the music, and I know that we can have a whole different talk about how they have gotten into the music, and they're really revolutionizing how music is done, how music is played, especially in the era of the pandemic, because I've been privy, to the work that they are doing. But if you can quickly, because I'm looking at the time, take a couple of minutes to tell me, how did you introduce your sons to music? That'll be swell.
yeah, that was funny. Curly.
Uh-huh.
Curly is from the time he was like 2 or 3. He was playing music,
Playing what?
piano.
Wow.
He had the ability to. His ear is very good. So my mother was teaching, and at that time I was away, so she was looking after him. And every day when she taught music, he would sit on her knee as she's teaching. And she says it got to the point that as soon as it was like 2:30 in the afternoon, he knew he had to get his bottle with his whatever milk, whatever. And looking at her, I was a year and a half, maybe a year, and he came and he sat with her for however many hours. So he was, already in. Um, when it was just quickly, when it was time for him to go to university and stuff, he said he wanted to do computer science. I said, fine, no problem. And he went and did a degree in computer science. And
No, we are having difficulty hearing you. Is there anything you could do to tickle your mic? Because your voice goes in and out, but it's low.
let me see if I turn it down.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know why.
No, you've gone too low now. Go the
Can you
other.
hear me now?
I can hear you now, but you need to go in that same direction that you're going.
Okay. This is the extent of it. I don't know.
All right, well, stay close to it.
I think I have to stay closer.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes. So
because I'm only seeing half of your face now.
Oh, good Lord.
Uh-huh. All right.
So he did a degree in computer science.
Good.
Then when he came up here, his intention was to do medicine. I know he had that intention. He had a degree, and then he suddenly he said he got to do music. He has to get it. So he went to Brooklyn College and did a degree in music. And he was still battling as I call the inward demons of finding himself. He actually started the medical program, and but music was just always there. It was always there, and eventually caved in, And he writes music, he arranges music. He works now with a church full time, St. Augustine's in Brooklyn, and he writes for Parkside Steel Pan every year competition, and he's won some medals in Trinidad with some international arrangements. Kevin is my musical audio person. They're both audio visual engineering types. Kevin, he likes jazz and stuff like that, but he plays beautiful gospel music. He likes gospel music. He plays jazz. He plays classical. He plays everything. He plays that, and they play pan. All of them play pan. So they're there. And the youngest one, he plays piano and plays sax and plays steel pan and trumpet too. So they get together. I couldn't teach them because I think I would have killed them before.
Okay.
Because they're not doing it right.
But I mean, you're a perfectionist, obviously, especially when it comes to the music business. And I know that you have many nieces and nephews who are the offsprings of your siblings, who are geniuses themselves in music. In 2 lines, because we are at 5 o'clock now.
Oops, yeah.
As a retiree, what else is in store for Mildred, the music educator and pianist?
I'm looking after plants. I'm experimenting with all kind of herbal stuff. I'm reading more, and I'm becoming a real techie. I'm learning how to do audio-visual techie, putting stuff together and tweaking this and turning that. So next time in my next life, I'm gonna be a techie.
I hear you. So thank you so much, Mildred.
Welcome. You're welcome.
Sitting and chatting with me. I'm beginning to wrap this up, so I just wanted to say to the guests, to our viewership who stopped by this afternoon, and those of you who will watch this as the recorded version, thank you so much for coming by and sitting through this and listening to us chat, listening to me chat with Mildred Lowe, who has 62 years. Mildred Lowe, 62 years in the music business, a Guyanese musical icon, legend, all wrapped up in one. 62 years and counting. Has done a wonderful job in the music business, not just for Guyana, but internationally. To you, the viewers, again, I thank you. I want to say special thanks to Claire Goring, who does the flyer every week. Thank you, my sister. I want to say thank you to Yash Sunarayan, who is working on the website. Thank you to Marcia Gordon, who is working on the YouTube channel. Thank you to Dr. Raul Manzano, who has done the logo for Arts, Culture, and Things in Between. The man behind all of this, Raul De Silva of RDE Pros. Can't thank him enough. Thank you, Raul, for all that you have done. I appreciate all of you for the back end work that you're doing to make this show a success. And for those of you who don't know, this was actually my COVID-19 project that started in May. I've been doing it every Sunday, and I ask you to spread the word. I interview or talk with folks in the arts or education or otherwise industry that I think will give us a chance not just to learn about them, but learn from them. And we meet every Sunday from 3 to 5 on Arts, Culture, and Things in Between. So I hope that you're able to join us next Sunday and pass the word on, share the video, and come back next week, Sunday at 3 o'clock. Again, to everyone, thank you very much for your continued support. The last thank you is to you, Mildred Lowe. Special lady. And I didn't mention it, but Mildred and I have worked together many years, and we continue to work. And Mildred, thank you for your service.
You're welcome, and thank you for allowing me to talk about the people on whose shoulders I stand. Because there's so many that have made me who I am today. I'm truly, truly grateful. And thank you for this opportunity, for letting people know how old I am. It's all right.
Only with your permission, I got it.
Yeah. So it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, folks, bye for now. See you next week, Sunday at 3. God willing.
Right.
And please observe all protocols as we go into the coming week. Bye-bye for now.
Right.